Hello. I see. Karen. Hi, Karen. It's so good to see you. Karen Wright's our director of ministry. She's our faith warrior that we send to all of our parents who are in crisis or if they're going through a hard time. So she's been on call this for the past, past year.
That's really awesome.
And then we have Tessa, one of my operations assistants. She's brand new to our team. So I'm so glad to introduce you to Seth.
Well, congratulations. Hi. It's nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. I'm excited to hear the talk today.
I don't know how exciting I'll be, but yeah, we'll go with it. I'll do my best.
And who's the third family? I know Kim. Hi, Kim.
And your perusing puppy dog in the background.
I love it. That's what I love seeing.
That way.
Yeah, there's two of them, and I don't know, they're running. I just gave them some treats, so they'll be quiet.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll add people as they come in. And of course, this is being recorded. So for those at home, welcome to our Lunch and Learn. I'm going to share my screen. For those who are new or returning, we actually took a 2-week break. So we are back. We had our executive director, Dana Hoff, was on the East Coast for a bit, and I was working on a couple of big projects at Autism Tree and moving to a new membership platform, which we will be doing on September 13th. So we can talk about that, later. You can always reach out to me if you have questions, but a couple of Zoom rules for those of you who are returning. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We recommend speaker view for presentation. Video sharing is optional, though I live to see all your smiling faces. And please type all questions and comments into the chat. We love to see the engagement with our speaker. I do include it in everybody's comments in the follow-up email as well. So please feel free to comment and ask questions. We will have a Q&A with our guest speaker as well at the end too. A quick update from Autism Tree. We have now reached over 644,000 people through all of our social media channels since March of last year. We do everything now: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, even Twitch is a new one that one of our interns is running for us. So thanks to all of our interns who have been helping us, and thanks to everyone who's been following us through the pandemic. Our posts have been shared over 1,062 times. So thanks for sharing our content. We do post videos all the time. We now have 428 videos on our YouTube channel for our families to watch during COVID to get more resources for their kid, like these Lunch and Learns. So please subscribe today if you haven't. It takes 1 minute, super quick. We posted 371 of those videos since March of last year, and that's all been because of our program managers and our amazing volunteers who have made 1-minute videos, which are fun for our families to engage them during online. One of those video series that we have is our Reading with Autism Tree series. We've posted 109 of those videos and reached over 53,000 people where our volunteers read children's books. We've also provided 311 virtual events to date since last March 28th and of last year. And we have 18 events coming up between now and the end of September, and plenty of more to come between now and the end of the year. We now offer 19 of our 20 programs virtually and 3 in person. One of these programs is a hybrid program, or adaptive dance as well. So we are keeping an eye on everything in the state of the world as we go, and we're still offering some in-person events for those who want to join us out in the community, outside, of course, and then still offering all of our virtual programs as well. So this is our 64th Lunch and Learn. Thanks to everybody who's being here today. Our executive director and co-founder, Dana Hoff, couldn't make it today, but she sends all of her love and gratitude to Seth Schwartz, who is our guest speaker today. I am so I am so grateful for this opportunity to thank Seth and share some love and gratitude about him. I actually found some of these pictures from the past about Seth, which I could not believe. I even found one from November of 2013. Seth has been around supporting us. He came to our 10-year gala at the Hard Rock. Party Like a Rock Star Gala. And then also some recent pictures as well. Our HPF ambassador and artist, international ambassador and artist Joel Anderson would create awards for our supporters who helped us get through the year every year. And we give them out at the beginning of each year to thank all of our supporters. And he created a Colom Award, and we gave that to Seth back in March in 2019. And then one of my favorite memories was when Seth invited us to Mingle San Diego. And this was a resource that I did not even know existed. And I was so honored to be invited to come speak a little bit about Autism Tree and the resources. This is for parents. So that was such a fun night. And a lot of our Autism Tree families I got to see there. And of course, Seth was an amazing host and was just so gracious and just an amazing resource. So I want to personally thank Seth for being here today. One thing that's really special about Seth is you can see the compassion that he has for our families. One of the really amazing things about Autism Tree is that we attract a lot of mission-driven people and people who really love their jobs and people who love our families and have that heart connection, like Dana and I always say. And Seth is one of those people. And special education law is so complex, and it's like a whole different language and a whole other world that I only know the top of it, so the tip of the iceberg. And I'm still learning things every day from our families and the challenges that they go through. And I feel so grateful, and I know our families do too, to have Seth as a trusted, reliable resource, and who just really cares about, meets that family where they're at and what they need and listens to them and really fights for their child to get the services that they need. So thank you, Seth, for supporting Autism Tree, for being a part of our family, and for coming to speak with us and share your story with us today.
So that must be the nicest introduction I can ever recall having. So thank you very much, Rebecca. I'm a little overwhelmed with that. So thank you. I do really appreciate that. With that said, I had to look back to what I was going to talk about, which was I was going to share a little bit of my personal journey to the practice of special education law. I'm kind of reading it while I go, and what I've learned about helping families navigating special education. So that's kind of like the scope of what I plan to talk about. But I didn't plan to, Art, because one of the things I was asked to do is just speak from my heart. So that's what I want to do today. Generally speaking, I never planned to be a special education attorney. So that's sort of my starting point. You can see I've got a couple guitars in the background. My passion was always music. And when I was growing up, I thought, I'm going to do music. And till I was about 30, I pursued that pretty strongly. But to step back, one of the reasons that music was such a big deal in my life was because I was dealing with some of my own issues, with my own attentional issues. I have ADHD. I struggled in school. I graduated 6 months late from high school. I had spent years and years tackling community college, and then eventually to a 4-year. When I was about 30, I finally graduated. Part of that had to do with it. My mom was in a bit of an accident and required some help. So I went back and helped her out, and in the process helped myself out by going back to school and finishing up and learning a lot about my own challenges and going to law school. And that led me to where I am today. But a big part of that background also is that my sister has autism. And she is the mod severe students that I help in many ways. And she's in home supportive living, and she's got a lot of help from Regional Center. She's in her early 40s now. It's just been very eye-opening, and it's not something I really understood when I went to law school. In fact, I would tell you that I was in some respects running a little bit from my family and my experiences because they're hard. they're not easy experiences, both with what my parents had to go through, personally with my sister and with themselves in, learning these new challenges that were placed in front of them with two kids. And then on top of that, seeing some of the attention being drawn towards my sister while I was growing up kind of left me a little bit more independent and chasing some of the things that I was interested in absence of a lot of other things. And so when it all came back around in law school, I wound up working for an attorney named Thomas Nelson in San Diego. And I had a great experience working for him. I learned a lot about autism, which in turn meant I learned a lot about my sister. And I remember one specific instance that really stood out, which is that while I was interning for Tom, and Yoshi Maurer, who is a advocate, who I met through Tom, had told me a lot about autism, explained the sensory challenges. And I went home to see my sister. We went out to a fireworks show at my bequest. I was like, let's go see these fireworks. And we got walking towards those fireworks, and they were loud and uncomfortable. And I could see my sister sort of cringing and not wanting to go there. And I looked at her and I said, do you want to go home? And that was probably about the first time that I would have done that. And we went back and we spent the better part of the evening chatting. And it was just a different experience of my family. And I sort of kind of knew from around that point that this is something that I just needed to be doing. So I wasn't looking at pursuing anymore my interest in music as much as maybe opening a business and still having something creative that I can do, but pursuing something that helps people that were similarly situated. Over the years, that's expanded a lot. I've started to feel like I really want to help more families with the IHSS pieces, with the regional center things that are going on. There's housing issues, there's all kinds of stuff, but we haven't sort of made our way towards that. And the pandemic has certainly moved us in various directions as individuals, whether it be myself or other families that we work with. It's just been very disruptive. And hopefully we'll all get to the other side of this in a really nice way, and our changes will be very positive. In the meantime, while I've been doing this, I've also become a parent, so that's been exciting. I have a 2-year-old as of a week from now, and a 4-month-old right now. So I've really learned some of the challenges during the pandemic of raising children, and it's given me another perspective on the families about what they go through. So I am just dedicated to doing this more and more every day. The passion for it doesn't stop. It's a complex area of law. You mentioned that, which actually just keeps it interesting, for better or worse, because sometimes I really have to take a deep dive in understanding things. We have a lot of challenges, I think, in this field, both with the understanding of the law from our client's perspective and what they're trying to accomplish and what the law actually allows us to do. Sometimes those things are very far apart. And then, of course, there's other issues, pragmatically speaking, where families have to deal with school districts that can't always do the things that they're hoping to do. So even if legally they're required to do it, it's sometimes a challenge to get them there. So my experience has been pretty long and hard fought to get to where I'm at today. But it's kind of led itself on this journey. I went from pursuing music and found myself in a special education attorney's office and fell in love with the field, and took all of those things that I did prior and sort of put it into starting my own practice. I was very fortunate within the first 6 months of my own practice. I met Matthew Story. Matthew Story and I started Schwartz and Story, which lasted up until a few months into the pandemic, which really impacted our business, and we felt it better to downsize a little bit. He has his own office now. We've at Brightside Law Group taken my name off the door, because it's really about our internal community that we have of attorneys and staff. I really wanted to focus on the office as a group of people, not a single person. So a lot of people sometimes are struggling to associate myself with the office, but Brightside Law Group is more than just myself, and I'm really excited about that. So as we grow and find new areas to help families in, I hope people will start associating Brightside Law Group with that help. So what have I learned about helping families? That's a pretty interesting sort of piece, and I thought a lot about it. The first thing that comes to mind is reasonability. It really the law uses the word appropriate. You hear this term, free, appropriate public education, the least restrictive environment. It's a lot of language, and it's a lot more language when I tell you that appropriate has been said to mean a reasonable calculation to confer some educational benefit based on what we know or what we should know at the time that we developed the IEP, to meet the unique needs of the child for 12 months of attainable progress. And I just defined a single word with a bunch of cases, which is really confusing. But I think the takeaway really is reasonable. And so what have I learned about helping families is that families need to step back a little bit, which is really hard to do, especially because by the time you get to a disagreement, you've been wound up a little bit. You're upset. You feel like, you're attracted in your positions. You might have a disagreement that's really hard to overcome. But by stepping back and asking what's reasonable in the situation and hopefully understanding the law a little bit so you can navigate that, really makes the biggest difference. It lets the cooperation of the IEP team and the parent work together, and then puts the focus on the child, which sometimes gets lost because by the time we get to a dispute, it tends to be a little too late to recover that focus. It becomes about, I think this is the right thing, and I think this is the way we're going to do it. And it's very easy to get so far apart on your opinion because the schools have 20, 30 hours a week that they're working with the student, so they feel like they know the child really well and the parent's not there. And then the parent obviously feels like they know their child the best because they're there all the time. So those opinions can be vastly different. And then when you take into account that schools are responsible for the educational piece, which is broad, it's not specifically academics, but they're not necessarily responsible for everything. And so finding those dividing lines and explaining those to families so that they are asking and advocating for the right things is also somewhat of a challenge. So one of the things that over the years I've learned that helps families the best is really education. Just make sure that there are a lot of opportunities and an open door to the office. So one of sort of the tenements of, I think I used that word incorrectly, but one of the things that's important to me is that people know they can call and they can pick up the phone and ask a question. They're not going to get charged an attorney fee. They can come for 10 or 15 or 20 consults over the year and never have a case. They're going to need answers. They're going to need a little bit of guidance, some opinions, some ideas of where to find information, some connections to people in the community, an advocate or a group like ATPF. There needs to be this bringing people together feeling so that families don't feel isolated and secluded from information and from other families. Which is why your initial slide with Mingle on it was a little bit of a surprise, because when we were in person, Mingle was a great way to do that. We tried to do it every couple months, and it was just fun to see people come together. We weren't disability specific because one of the ideas was that, a family with a student who has Down syndrome might meet a family with a child with autism and find out that the therapies are different or the approaches are different, and that might actually be useful. So we were hoping to mingle together people of all different backgrounds and experiences. And now it's a little different. Now it's online, like you had mentioned. I think you said 311. Wow, in a year. So you spend a lot of time online. But it is a great resource. So we've been doing webinars a lot and teaching families about the framework of special education, which during COVID, admittingly, it's a little tough. It's tough because the law hasn't changed, but the application has changed a lot, and the expectations both from the school and from the families have changed. And they are always changing. I remember doing a webinar not too long ago where somebody had asked, what's the state's position on masks? And I said, well, the state hasn't had a position on masks as of today in terms of schools. And I got off the webinar and the governor announced a school mask mandate. So, just when you think you understand it, it's changing all the time. So this has been a tough sort of time to operate in for families, especially when it comes to education. And now they're working from home. A lot of families are. Their kids are at home, which can be pretty intense because sometimes school can provide a little bit of a break or a respite, if you will. So the times are very different. And I think when I approach this now, I'm very cognizant of what can we do to help families understand how to navigate this. And when I deal with it in terms of a case, if we're helping a family that way, or thinking of outcomes. Where is the family going to be left when we're done with the case? Are they going to be on the right track, moving forward in a good direction? Well, anybody can ever guarantee a specific outcome. The goal of everything we do is just to push it in the right direction a little bit more every day. So that's what I've learned about sort of special education from my practice. I've also learned it's harder than my family's experience in many cases. That's something I don't think I expected. I didn't expect to see situations where we were placing students in residential care. For instance, that's not an experience I had. So when we started experiencing those, that was a hard pill to swallow. And there are a lot of issues around it too. It's just, parents putting their kids in say an out-of-state residential is a very hard decision. And sometimes I had this recently come up. A family didn't want to put their child in residential, but the school did. And the way the law operates is it creates a little bit of a gap. It doesn't say that a parent can turn down all services and not do the residential, but it leaves them sort of in this interesting limbo if they still want the school to serve them, because the school district can go and try to get a judge to say their offer is good and that's the right thing to be doing. And then it leaves the parent without services for their child. So there are a lot of interesting aspects about special education law in terms of the interventions that weren't similar to what I had experienced. Similarly, though, I've learned a lot about kids with ADHD. I've learned a lot about myself from the kids I've helped too. And that's been a great deal of fun, and it's been very eye-opening. And it's made me question how IEPs are operating. For instance, are we teaching students academics or are we teaching them skills? Because sometimes a skill can help you access your academics, which is the underlying purpose of the law, but we're focused on reading comprehension. And reading comprehension isn't necessarily the underlying problem. We talk about executive functioning, we give a student a planner, but we don't teach them the fundamentals of planning. So they've got the device, but they don't have the underlying work that they have to do. It's a very interesting field that way. And similarly, it's hard for parents because they have to figure out how to do this at home as well. So, these problems don't stop at school; they come home. So I've been exposed to a lot of things that I didn't understand because I didn't have that experience. And at the same token, I kind of love the challenge of trying to figure out how to solve the problem. So that makes it fun. But I won't say it's fun because it's not always fun for the families. It's hard work for everybody. So my experience has been mixed, but I love doing this. I wouldn't choose anything else. I only wish to add to it and be able to do some of the things like the wills and trusts that families ask for from time to time that we're not able to do. I'd like to be able to be more of, I sort of compare it to a school district's law firm where the school district goes for anything they need, and I would like to be able to service the families and the individuals much broader with a better scope over time. So, and that is my experience.
Thank you, Seth. Wow. I'm just taking it all in. I mean, I love how you, words matter so much. So I love how you clarify, especially for law. So I love how you clarify things and talk about that. But your experience, thank you for sharing from the heart. And, you didn't have to share anything about your sister and your family and your whole journey. So that's really, it makes sense and why you're so able to be so compassionate with our families. And I just thank you for, working so hard to understand, to take that extra step and bridge the gap for our families, and not only just with autism, but for all special needs, which is really amazing. So I'll open it up to any questions from anybody or comments. But Seth, I know we talked a little bit about this before in the pre-call, but I kind of wanted to get your opinion on what the landscape looks right now for kids as they're back in school. and what, yeah, that question that I asked you at the beginning of school shutdown, like what does it look like right now for
Your
you? And I love
question,
your answer.
question was considerably more pointed. You just asked me if I thought schools would shut down again. My answer was quite a bit broader. So I nobody can be sure. Nobody can predict exactly what's going to happen. But what I was saying to Rebecca earlier was that our numbers right now seem to be higher than they've been in quite some time. If we still had the tier system, we would still be in the purple tier, which would tell us that schools shouldn't be reopening unless they were already open. So that leads us to think that maybe schools will shut down again. But we also have a really interesting political climate. We've worked really hard in the last year and a half to get schools reopened. So there's a lot of work's been done to try to find safety procedures and protocols in place that's going to work for our students. So the districts have done all these things to prep. And then we have this political climate going on with our governor and this recall election. It's hard to imagine them shutting down right now. It's just the optic of it looks really bad. We're trying to come out of this, but our numbers are going up, but we're in the middle of a potential recall. I don't see it closing down again right now, but we are seeing problems. We're seeing classrooms shut down. We're seeing COVID cases. We're certainly reading a lot of news articles about, I read the other day a teacher that read to the class with their mask pulled down. I don't believe it was in California, but it might have been. And, many students in the class got sick as a result with COVID. So we see those things and we know this is a problem. But kids under 12 aren't vaccinated. And, some of the kids in our community won't get vaccinated, for various reasons, whether it be personal beliefs or, actual verifiable medical beliefs. So there's a lot of potential for the spread of coronavirus right now. And that's just going to mean we're going to see a lot of this. That pressure could add up, but I think it's counteracted again by the politics right now. So I think people are going to try to work through this. And then there's a lot of transition to the families that have happened. This is really the second big one. The first one was shutting down in the first place, getting comfortable and figuring out how to operate and navigate your family at home. And now we're trying to figure out how to go back. A good example of that's pretty interesting, which is that, when you tried to find a nanny in, March of 2020, you had a good shot at it. You had a lot of people applying for that nanny position. But today, the rates being paid to nannies have skyrocketed, and they're very hard to come by. Many of those nannies went and worked as pod teachers and did a lot of daycare to help the families out so they could work from home. And now as we're headed back, there's just a high demand to help the kids at home. So there are a lot of pressures that we're not necessarily thinking about that I think are going to keep schools open for at least the foreseeable future.
Mhm.
And that was my long-winded answer for you.
Well, I love it. It gives us a better, you are the expert, so you have a broader vision than we do of, what it looks like right now for families. And yeah, so what are some of the main concerns are you hearing from parents right now?
So, it's a multifaceted question. I'll tell you the one I'm not hearing first, which
Okay.
is not an attempt to avoid the question. I'll come back to it. But the one I'm not hearing a lot about is I lost a lot of service and my son or daughter has regressed. We're not hearing that. And I think that's because a lot of families are focused on here and now. COVID's done a lot of that for us. This is what I'm dealing with today. My child needs my help today. I'm not going to worry about what the school's doing because I have a lot of things to worry about. And as a result of that, a lot of people didn't document what happened from March 2020 to today. So now as schools are reopening, people are focused on, if I don't want in person, what do I do now? And they're focused on, what are the safety protocols in school? So that whole past piece is what I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about. So what are we actually dealing with now? A lot of mask questions. That's a big conversation. And there's an attorney, and I haven't read his case yet, Thomas Nelson, who just won a case that deals a little bit with masks. So I'm looking forward to reading that even today and finding out how the court ruled. But I know he won, so it doesn't it looks, from what I understand, that you can't isolate a student who won't wear a mask. That's how I understood the issue to be. And we kind of knew that already. We know that schools have to work with children with IEPs to wear masks, maybe a goal, or maybe go through a process of figuring out, from a health perspective, that they're capable. There's some guidance out already that says that, you can do a face shield with a drop cloth at the bottom of the face shield. So we're getting a lot of mask questions, which makes a lot of sense because, children that are struggling with sensory needs are going to struggle probably with a mask. Getting a lot of vaccine questions. I don't think that's going away. It existed before, but obviously with, some of the things that are swirling around right now, we're hearing a lot more questions. One of the things that happened recently is that the medical exemptions are coming up a lot because the law had a date, I believe it was July of this year, where they said if the doctor who had issued the medical exemption had been questionably investigated or brought up on a potential, I don't want to say charge, it's the wrong language, but they were being investigated, the school could revoke that exemption. And so we're seeing a lot of those revocations, which is leading parents to ask, where do I take my child if I can't take them to an in-person school? The other issue that's coming up a lot right now, and I imagine it's going to change pretty quickly, is that when the state, it's called sunsetting, where the statute they passed goes away. In this case, we had these distance learning statutes, and they are now gone. They ended at the end of the last school year. And in place of that, the state said if a student can't go in person if they don't feel like it's safe, that we can opt for independent study, which has been a real challenge for kids on IEPs, because there's another statute that says before you put a child on independent study, you need to make sure that they're capable of doing it. So our only in-person option has a requirement that they have to check it with an IEP team first, which could take 30 days upon entering school. So a lot of our families are hearing, bring your kids back, or they're hearing your child can't do independent study, you must bring your child to school, which is sort of counterintuitive to the whole purpose of this piece of law that they passed, which is to give a non-in-person option to the family. And so we're finding that to be a little bit of a challenge, but from a personal perspective, I believe that the purpose of the independent study law that just passed was to open up an option for families. I don't think they intentionally excluded kids on IEPs, but we definitely have to address this now because it wasn't addressed well. So vaccines, masks, and non-in-person learning. Those are the three big issues that we're seeing a lot of.
Is there any main advice that you, from your perspective, that you think is useful for parents to know during this time when thinking about those questions?
Sure. I always say, play dumb, ask smart questions is something I've always said to families, but right now it's more true than ever. You need to document everything you do. You can't just have a phone conversation, but ask a lot of questions, get a little bit of information about how things work, and then ask about how the school's applying these things. Ask for help. People in this field, regardless if they're teachers or if you feel like they're on the other side, they're actually there to help. People got into this field because they wanted to. I've yet to meet somebody who jumped in it for the money. I'm sure it's possible, but teachers are there to help. So if you ask them, I'm really struggling with this thing, can you recommend a way of going about it? Or I'm really struggling over here, can you tell me, what you'd recommend doing? You're probably going to get somebody who really wants to give you that answer, and they're going to work hard for you, which kind of leads me to something else I tell families, which is you don't have to do all the heavy lifting. Let the people around you who are professionals do some of that lifting for you. But sometimes you have to ask for help. So ask for help. Ask questions, become an information gatherer, and document those things. Email is always the best documentation that you can do.
Love it. Oh, that's so useful. And then any other questions from anybody right now? I want to make sure that I give voice to those. I have more questions, but okay. So Seth, Mingle at San Diego, it's still happening?
Well, because we're not in person, Mingle hasn't happened since at least March of 2020. I don't actually remember the last date. we have some hopes of bringing back something where we can bring the community together. I may caution a little bit personally on the in-person right now, just because my daughter's 4 months old. So I certainly have concerns of my own. I don't want to bring anything back to the family, you know. But with that said, you know, we're also very accustomed to living with masks on and not going out as much anymore. So there's also a comfort for people in the community and for myself about when is it the right time to do this. In fact, the first thing that I will be doing out in the community is going to be the San Diego Day of Play later this month. I believe, let me see if I can find the date since I mentioned it. And that's our first in-person that we've done in, it feels like almost 2 years now. And that is on the 25th of September. So, and that's San Diego Family Magazine. So it's a vendor fair, and it gives people an opportunity to come by your booth and talk about what you do. We're giving away school supplies at our booth. It's exciting to be back, but it is a little nerve-wracking because we don't know what to expect. We have a county mandate to wear masks, so we're going to do it in the most honorable way we can to make sure that we're respecting everybody, regardless of whether they choose, one way or another with masks or whatnot. We just want to be safe. So.
It's always best to take caution. Yeah, well, that's good. And you also mentioned a little bit about Friday coffees. So tell us a little bit about the resources that your firm is providing right now.
Sure. So we typically do about 2 webinars a month. Usually one is more of a webinar style where we bring up special education topics and try to teach the framework. So that one, if you gauge it, I like to think of traffic. You've learned red light, yellow light, green light. You've learned you don't cross white, double yellow lines and solid white lines. Well, parents don't know the law in that way when they think of IEP. So we try to teach them that framework so that they can navigate the special education realm with a little bit more ease. It's not about teaching them exactly what to do. It's about giving them the concept so they know how to guide themselves through it. So we do a bit of that. We talk about some of the rights and obligations that schools have as well. And then we do a Where Are We Now, which we've been doing since the pandemic started. So I think that the next Where Are We Now is actually for the 14th of this month that we're planning to do, which is a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And then I have an advocacy panel that we've been doing on a bi-monthly, where we bring 6 advocates and we have a discussion about what they're seeing in the community and how to help families. Those have been fun. I'm a moderator rather than a speaker, so I try to keep the legal piece out of it, let them talk about what they're actually experiencing. We did a dyslexia panel about a month and a half ago. That was fantastic. It was a real deep dive into a subject with a speech pathologist, psychologist, educational therapist, and it's fun to see that interaction and not just look at it from one angle. And then we have coffee and chat, which you mentioned when we started talking about this. Coffee and chat is meant to be sort of a no prep opportunity to ask questions of a professional. So it has a topic. This Friday at 9 a.m., we have a coffee and chat with Crystal Ruse, who's a BCBA, and we're talking about behavioral interventions in the schools and functional behavior assessments. And then, of course, we're going to talk about it in relationship to health and safety measures and COVID right now. And we try to change it up. I should say that if you join our Facebook page at Brightside Law Group, so Facebook /Brightside Law Group, we change these up from time to time so that you're not coming back to the same thing. If you join one of our framework, sort of styled lectures, you're going to hear it differently each time. The idea is that it doesn't always fit everybody the first time you hear it. And if you hear it a little differently, maybe it'll click. And we try to vary up the topics that we do so that you can come back and get more information and build on what you've learned.
I love that. Well, so you answered my other question, which is how best to find you. So Facebook and your website, right?
BrightsideLawGroup.com. Yeah, we're in the process of redeveloping it right now. So maybe by the time somebody looks at this on YouTube, they'll see BrightsideLawGroup.com up, and there'll be articles and blogs and all of our events, and of course a newsletter you can join. But right now, all of that's up on Facebook.
Awesome. And is it okay? We do send a follow-up email to everybody who signs up, and our whole community. Actually, we have had over 270 people attend our lunch and learns over the past 65 weeks. So I'll do a follow-up email with all those links to your Facebook page. And is it okay if we give out your contact information as well, your email?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I started in the beginning saying that, we're an open door. It can be a little hard. Sometimes people come to us all at once and it takes a little time to get back to everybody, but we'll do our best to do that. And I just want people to feel like they can knock on the door of an attorney's office and get an answer to a question they have and not feel like, this is a terrible thing to do or it's really hard. It should be like talking to your friend. And hopefully we allow that to happen and make that environment. So.
Well, I love it. And Karen said in the chat, Seth, you're a gift from God for the families that need your expertise. Thank you. So thank you for taking time again out of your busy schedule. I know you're probably tired from being a new dad and having the 2-year-old and a 4-month-old at home. And we just so appreciate you coming to share today. And thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys having me, and I'm again more than welcome to stick around and answer any questions anybody has. I'm wordy, as you can tell, so I'm always happy to chat.
I love it. Well, let's take a group picture before we go. I'll do a screenshot, so if you'd like to turn on your camera, now would be the time. We love to see your smile. If not, it's all good. All right, smile, ready? 1, 2, 3. Awesome. Okay, well, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Seth directly or reach out to me and I can connect you with him. And I hope everyone has a happy rest of their Wednesday and a great rest of their week. And we hope to see you next week at our next Lunch and Learn.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Seth. Bye, Marilee. Bye, Karen, Tessa, Kim.
Bye, thank you.
All right.